Well, hey, Camp family, we are excited to bring this video to you and introduce to you what we're calling Second Voices. This will be a once a month part of our Seconds Overflow posting, where we'll be interviewing different people from our camp family to gather their perspective on the topic that we are sharing with you each month. So, of course, this series is all about winter and what it means to be in a winter of life, a spiritual winter, or just winter outside. And so we're excited to interview these 5 folks that are good friends of ours and see what they have to say about what winter is to them. Each month you'll hear from 5 people that are of all ages and backgrounds, and we believe that you'll hear a thread of commonality through what they say, while also getting to glean a little bit from each of their different perspectives. We can't wait for you to hear what they have to say. Now, all these interviews were filmed over Zoom at different periods of time, and there are a few spots where the audio or the video gets a little glitchy, like we all know, because we've all been doing Zoom for almost a year now. I've done my best to add in some images and clip some things out to keep a good flow throughout the video. So we encourage you to sit down and watch this video over about 25 minutes, or you can let it play in the background like your favorite podcast. Also, let us know in the comments what your answers are to these questions. It's a great way to stay engaged with your camp family and talk back and forth with each other about what it means to be in a spiritual winter, what your favorite parts of winter are like outside. So finally, if you're in a spiritual winter right now and you're really struggling, we want to encourage you to reach out to somebody. Our camp family is vast and diverse, and I guarantee that somebody has been through what you're going through right now. And we're all in this together. And so we encourage you to reach out through the comments, or if you would like to reach out to us on the social media pages at Seconds ICBC. You can also email us at secondsicbc@gmail.com. So let's get to the interviews. I want to introduce to you the camp family that we are interviewing this month. You're going to hear from Lee Brown, who has been in ministry for over 50 years and has a wealth of knowledge and biblical understanding, has been a pastor, an interim pastor for Mindy and I here in Bedford, and served at Tell City First Baptist Church for a long time as well. We're going to hear some great things from him, and also from Tammy Graham, who some of you might know is the girls camp pastor here at camp in the summer. She's also been a youth pastor at Petersburg First Baptist Church and has been in ministry for over 20 years. You'll also hear from Aaron Fish, who's a college student and familiar camp staffer over the last 4 or 5 summers, who's training at Anderson University to go into the ministry. You'll hear from an 8th grader, Tabbi Alexander, who's awesome and has some really fun things to say. And you'll also hear from Bennett, who most of you know is our son, 1st grader, and has some of his favorite parts of winter as well. So we hope you enjoy this, and we can't wait to continue to share with you about winters later this week and finish this series out in the next few weeks. Enjoy.
What image comes to mind when you think of winter?
Like the bare trees. Like everything doesn't look so pretty, but when you wait, everything like starts blooming and you just see life come back again.
When I think of winter, I think of it's kind of cold, but it's kind of like in 2 parts, you know? Like there's the first half of winter that's like cold but still like cozy, because that's when we have Christmas and like all those holidays. And then for some reason, once February rolls around every year, it's like you're done with winter again.
Yeah.
And so it's just like it's cold, it's dreary, not really fun. And so like it's good right at first, and then it's like I'm sick of it.
It was when that ice storm came and everything was ice. The branches, like you could see the ice, like, oh, it was glistening, and I just thought that was absolutely beautiful. Mm-hmm. Everything was just covered in ice and pretty and sparkly.
It looks like bare trees, and that first it's just bare, and it's kind of sad and lonely. But then it snows bright, and you get to play outside and you get to build a snowman and sled.
I think snow scenes. We have some beautiful pine trees behind our house, and you know, when the snow falls and sticks to the pine trees, that's just a beautiful image of winter for me. And seeing maybe some birds come in to feed, that add to that snow scene.
What do you look forward to, or what do you enjoy about winter?
The snow and like playing with my siblings in the snow. We have a good sledding spot. We go up to the high school and we get like snowboard and sled.
Something I look forward to is building a snowman and having fun with my brother.
Winter is a time that you can kind of slow down your pace, hopefully a little bit. I used to think early in my ministry that January and February were light months, and that didn't work out. They soon became as busy as any other month. But really, I think the winter time is a time for planning, time for reflecting. And for me, it always became a time to kind of plan out the whole year, to get I guess maybe a good spiritual basis. There was perhaps even a little more time for Bible study and meditation and prayer. And so the wintertime kind of allowed for not only just a personal reflection, but a spiritual reflection, and something that helped to guide my ministry throughout the rest of the year. I remember back in the days when I was in school, we had a lot of snow days back then. And those were times that we got out the jigsaw puzzles and just kind of laid back and reflected and took some quieter times.
What I look forward to the most is probably the snow. Since I've been up north the past few winters, it's so beautiful, and I just love walking around, hearing the snow crunch and that kind of stuff, and it's very nice.
The one thing that I look forward to would be, and I think this will be way different perspective as far as the season itself. I kind of like just cozy fires, you know. And there's times when my husband will put a fire in the fire pit during the winter. I love getting a warm blanket and just laying and cuddling and drinking. I don't drink hot cocoa very often, but I like coffee. And I love snow. One good snow, which we haven't seen in 2 years. But I don't like it all the time because it just gets, I don't know. It's pretty one time. One, and then I'm good. The starry nights, I really don't think that winter starry nights are just absolutely beautiful. And then, crazy as it sounds, like during the winter, the one thing I look forward to is basketball season, and not like college basketball or NBA. I could care less about that. But getting to see all my girls play and getting to see them do the one thing that they love, and the one thing that I know without a doubt that God has blessed them with the gift of playing basketball, I enjoy that.
What are some things you don't like about winter, or things that you dread as winter's coming up?
The cloudy days, the shorter days. I like the sunshine. So knowing that winter's coming, I realize that, you know, the days are shorter, they're going to be darker, a little more dreary. And so it's a time, I really don't like the cold weather. So, you know, I like, as I said, I like to be outside, either walking or working in the yard or doing something outside. And so I really dread the time when I don't have those opportunities because of the season change. I love to be outdoors. And so winter hinders that quite a bit because I really don't like to be cold.
I cannot stand that the days are shorter. I I can't stand that at all. It's like 5 o'clock and my body says go to sleep, but I don't want to because there's too much to do.
That all the trees are bare. I would rather it look like spring where things are coming back. And
Everyone just seems sad all the time. Because I think it's along the lines of like no one can get out and do things. Things are starting to close up. People are uncomfortable all the time because it's always cold, and so it's just everyone just is so much more irritable and sad all the time.
How do you prepare for winter or an upcoming winter?
I dust my snowboard off.
Buy a really, really big coat and make sure we have plenty of firewood and decaf coffee.
Well, physically, taking care of a house, I unscrew the hoses from the faucets outside, and I bring in the snow shovels from the shed so that they're handy in the garage when I need a snow shovel. So, I mean, those physical kind of things that get the place, the house ready for winter.
Take a deep breath and just realize that things are going to pass, and like you kind of need to take your like day off, like just day to do nothing. Lay around and just relax and just kind of allow yourself to kind of almost like a hard cut from one season to the next. And so it's like after the holidays, it's just like it's kind of like you need a hard reset, and so you just that's really when I get that time.
Tell us about a spiritual winter that you've experienced or a time in your life that felt like a winter.
An image that comes to mind that reminds me of like a spiritual winter is like a tree that has lost all of its leaves and is covered in snow, because the tree has lost its leaves, it's lost its life and color. It's covered in this snow that's white and just is blanking it and like collapsing over it, and like I know for a lot of us during our spiritual winters, it feels like we're kind of dead inside and we don't really have anything left. And that is exactly when we kind of pick ourselves back up, because that tree, even though it looks dead and it's lost all of its leaves, it still has life inside of it, and it will come back again.
It happened when I retired from active ministry, and we left our home and our church family in Tell City, and we moved to Bloomington, where our son and daughter-in-law and grandchildren are. And it was after that move was made that I think I was in a spiritual winter, because quite frankly, in Tell City, I pretty well knew everybody, and everybody pretty well knew me, whether I knew them or not, because I'd been active in the community, and I could go down the street and there were friends that we had that were not members of our church, but because they were part of our community life, we knew them. And Ruth hated to go to a store with me because I had to talk to everybody that I saw. and then we moved to Bloomington, and nobody knew us. And I could go to the store, and I said at one time that the people in Bloomington that knew me best outside of my family were the cashiers at Kroger, because they were the ones that I saw most frequently. And it was a spiritually dry time, to realize that I'd gone from a place where I was well known to a place where I was unknown, and nobody knew me, nobody knew my background, nobody knew who I was, and perhaps there were those that didn't care who I was, and that was troubling to me because that was different than anything I'd experienced before. And what brought me out of that was God leading us to a church where we found a new church family, and we found an opportunity to put our roots down and to start growing again. And so that took us out of that spiritual winter, took me out personally out of that spiritual winter, and brought me to a better season of life. And I've been in that better season ever since.
I would say right before we moved to Fort Branch, which would have been we've lived here, going to be 6 years in March. But between moving here and my dad retiring from the ministry, to being under a different pastor, and I never had been under a different pastor, other than, I've sat under my dad, my brother, and my grandfather. I've never had been under any other pastor, and we've already had an intern pastor for almost 2 years, and then we've had our new pastor for a year. And I wouldn't say it's been bad, because winter again is not bad to me. It used to be, but not so much anymore. But that was just, I needed to, without having my dad in the pulpit, that was bare. You know what I mean? And it was like having to accept someone new and not compare them to my dad was huge. And I'm learning to be me. I'm not Charles Baxter's daughter anymore. I'm not the preacher's kid. My whole life I've been the preacher's kid. I'm still the preacher's kid, and I always will be the preacher's kid, but not at my church. And so I'm learning how to be me, and I'm learning on my own. Like, it was so easy seeing Dad on Wednesday and Sundays and being like, hey Dad, I was reading scripture, and hey, what do you think of this? Let's have a chat. Instead of just asking him, and I'm studying it on my own, and I'm learning on my own, and I'm learning for Tammy Graham and how that applies to my life and how it affects my life and how I can teach it to others and my daughters and the people around me. So I would say that is how I personally have grown. I'm learning who I am as God's child, as him as my father.
I would say the biggest spiritual winter for me was my first year of college. I worked at camp the summer before, and so I was on high from camp, and I was excited. And I got to school, and I didn't know anyone, didn't have anybody to help lift me up spiritually. I felt kind of alone, and felt kind of even alone from God a little bit. And it really was some of the darkest times, but it was during that time that I learned some of the biggest life lessons and biggest truths about God, because I realized that God will always be there for you, and that sometimes you need to go through that hard time. Sometimes you need to feel alone so you can see when God is actually there for you.
How do you see God in winter, or what about winter shows you God's hand?
Absolute sky. And I love the sky any season. I love seeing, I don't know, it was the other day I was in my car and I was pulling into school. It was 2 days ago. And the sky was so red and orange and pink. And I love looking at the sky, while I'm driving or in the rearview mirror ahead of me, and you see the silhouette of the trees. I just know and I'll immediately say thank you, God, because I know that's like okay, it's going to be a good day because God is in it. You know, God is here. That's the first thing I see in the morning is that sky. And I don't know, that is something I know God is in it. It's just a great start to a great day because I know it's his hand that made that for me.
I usually see God kind of lifting us up through the mess and the darkness, because for a lot of people, winter is like the worst season for them. It's very sad, very lonely. Yet you see a lot of people we have New Year's and their New Year's resolutions and just decide to pick themselves back up after they have fallen or after all this hard time from the winter.
When you think everything's done, you just quit with life and stuff because things aren't going your way, but things start going your way, things happen, good things start happening, life just blooms again.
In a physical sense, I remember a time when I was probably about 13. We visited in Iowa. We were on a farm, and during the day it had snowed quite a bit. And that night the moon came out, the skies cleared off, and we had a full moon, almost as bright as day because of the covering of snow. And the full moon, it was so bright. I just, at that moment, at a young age, God has got his hand in this, and God is showing how beautiful his creation is. And, we always think of perhaps springtime or the colors of fall or the growth of summer as God showing his handiwork, but I see God's handiwork in the beauty of the winter time as well, even though nature has perhaps gone dormant from our viewpoint. The trees lose their leaves and the flowers die, and all those things run through their cycle. But God is still at work in all of that, and sometimes we see it in different ways than we see in other seasons of life.
So, when you look outside and you see the trees are bare, when you see that there's no blooms or anything, you just know, you have that expectation that when spring rolls around, the newness is going to come forth. I think when I look around winter and I see the bareness and stuff, I look at what's on the inside, and that tree might look really bare, but boy, is it going to be beautiful here, when the season rolls around. And so I guess it would be one of those, the same with people, we sometimes look on the outside of them, but not really take a minute to look on what's on the inside because they have something to offer. They're not necessarily bare and dry and cold and ruthless as we tend to make think they are. But so I guess that would be something I would say, is that expectation of knowing that people have something to offer. We just have to give them the chance and listen, and get to know people better, especially now. There's things that I guess I didn't appreciate that I do now, like smiles. And I look more into people's eyes, but you really don't have a choice when they're wearing a mask. I miss seeing people get close and want to hug, and I have that expectation of knowing it's going to happen. It's just, I can't wait till it does, because I'm just tired of it.
On a spiritual sense, when the winter times come, I think we perhaps look for God more often than we do when things are going good. And life is good. So in the spiritual winter times, perhaps we look for God and depend upon Him more, like we should be all the time. But it's a kind of a searching and knowing that God is there and that He is taking you through what may seem like a winter time in your life. The idea that the nature loses its what we would think of as beauty. The green leaves change to orange and brown and fall off, and nature goes dormant, and so we think, well, nothing's happening. And spiritually, then, that translates for me that even though we may not see everything that God does, God is still at work. And He may be growing the roots of the plants during that time, which He does. And so maybe that's the time that He grows our roots, and we emerge into a new life and a new season, refreshed and re-energized and invigorated to do His work and His will. And so even though it may look like God's not active or doing anything in our lives, we know that He is.
That it might be a little sad and lonely, that He is always protecting us, and even when it's sad, He brings back the happiness just like spring.
We really hope that you've enjoyed this time with these 5 different people of the Camp family sharing with you about winters of their own or the season of winters. We hope that you will answer the questions in the comments to share and connect with others. We look forward to doing this each session for each season, and we've got some exciting people coming up for spring. So make sure you're connecting in the comments and sharing things with friends so that we can all be doing this winter session and season together.